welcome to Special Stage Extra. Here's what we've got coming up on the show today. But first, we are at the Britpart All-Wheel Drive Championship, where we have had torrential rain all night, making it pretty muddy today. And that means that there's going to be plenty of action in the season's final showdown.
Round 8 of the championship, the Paul Vidgen Forest Machine sponsored event, heads to Wales once again. And it will be the ideal start for Rick and Sandra Mann as they open up an early advantage with some good times over the first 2 runs of the day. For Andy DiGiulio and Paul Jones, it will be second. They do, however, lead the 8i class at this stage and have a small but comfortable advantage over third place. And in that third place were newly crowned champions Chris and Jonathan Bird. The pair don't have the best of starts here at the final round. They hit a rock on lap 1 and broke a wheel, as well as bending the suspension, but for now third was quite secure for the pair. Mark Hones would end the opening runs in 4th place, but it could have been very different had it not been for a good save with this slight off-road excursion, shall we say. Lucky to get away with it and hopefully not knocking the confidence for the next run. For Bruce Tigwell, it will be 5th place to start the event, lying around 30 seconds behind Hones, just losing out with the second run time being a little off the pace. James King makes a good start to this weekend's event as he ends the morning's runs in 6th, 22 seconds faster the second time round, so things were looking good for the rest of the event. Martin Hounsell lies in 7th place after run 2. 18 seconds was the difference at this stage, but the second run time was a lot more competitive, so this certainly could change into the afternoon. And indeed, it could change from behind too, as Mark Potts ends the morning's runs in 8th place. Only 5 seconds behind Hounsell though, so things were close. And it will be almost as close back to 9th place, as Tim Tennant lies just inside the top 10 and just 6 seconds behind Potts, so the fight would be on. And rounding out the top 10 at this stage will be Scott Benwell, a good overall result so far and leading the way in Class 7 by a good margin. Some of the classes outside the top 10 now then, and it would be the Class 3 lead for Adrian Marfell, going well and not a massive amount of time off the top 10 as he lies in 11th. Class 7i was being led by event leader Rick Mann, and it will be some way back to second in the class. Tom Rimmel takes up that position at this stage with 12th overall. Brian Dyke has a good run this morning to take the lead in Class 8, lying in 13th overall, but only 3 seconds back from Rimmel. The advantage up in the lead of Class 8 was now 40 seconds over this man, Adrian Beer, second in that class and lying in 14th overall. And rounding out the top of Class 8 now would be Chris Bowler. Times were a little closer here, with second and third separated by 16 seconds. With Scott Benwell starting to run away with the Class 7 lead, it left second in that class open for Tony Rooney. Not the best of starts, but he could still move a few places up the overall results. It was a good start for Rich Mitchell, taking a good early lead in Class 4 at this stage, but the overall times were starting to get a bit more spread out now. Joe Philpott takes an early lead in Class 2, but the overall times were not helped when problems on the car were causing some issues along the course, not least getting up this hill on the opening run. And second in that class behind Philpott would be Paul Lindstrom. The times were fairly close, just 18 seconds behind the 2 class runners. And for Steve Llewellyn, it will be second in Class 4, another to get a maximum time on the day's opening run. Meanwhile, rounding out the top of the classes would be Scott Harris, third in Class 7 at this stage, and adding to the list of those with a maximum on the opening run today. So with 2 runs complete, the results are looking like this. On to the next few runs, and there wouldn't be any change in the lead as Rick and Sandra Mann continue to lead the event, now with just over a minute's advantage. No change in second place either, apart from the times, as Andy DiGiulio and Paul Jones continue to hold that position, and of course with it, the 8i class lead in the Milner. It would unfortunately be bad luck for Chris and Jonathan Bird though, as they retire when they chip a tooth on the 3rd gear and limp the car out of stage to avoid more damage. The loss of Bird, of course, moves a few people up the results now, and it would be a move into 3rd for Mark Hones, 2nd in the class behind DiGiulio in front, with exactly a minute separating them now. It would also be a move up into 4th for James King at this stage. The times outside the podium places getting a little more spread out though, with just over 2 minutes between 3rd and 4th. Martin Hounsell actually manages to gain 2 places at this stage in the event, gaining a place through retirement and on run times, 5th overall now, and just outside the 8i class podium places by 3 seconds. Unfortunately for Bruce Tigwell, it would be a move down the results, ending the morning in 6th place after lying in 5th after the opening 2 runs. Mark Potts moves up the results now, 7th place, and within half a minute of Tigwell ahead in the overall and the class standings. Tim Tennant, meanwhile, moves up the results to lie in 8th now. The last 2 runs identical, unable to find any more time on the course in that last run through. No change in the Class 8 lead, as Brian Dyke continues to have a hold on that one, moving up to take 9th overall though to go with the class lead. And continuing to round out the top 10 would be Scott Benwell, still holding that Class 7 lead and only 10 seconds behind Dyke in 9th on the overall results. So at the end of run 5, the results look like this. On to the final results then. And despite not completing all runs, it will be 3rd in Class 7 for Tony Rooney. No change in the class for Paul Lundstrom, as he still maintains 2nd in Class 2, but maximum times on the final 3 runs drop him to 23rd on the leaderboard. Sadly for Tim Philpott, it hadn't been a good day. Maximums on the opening runs, and the final run put him down in 20th overall. But luckily still managing to get 3rd in class after a few retirements. Scott Harris, meanwhile, has a much better run in the afternoon to finish the event with 2nd in Class 7. A maximum on run 1 probably wouldn't have made much difference to the class position though. Steve Llewellyn has a good steady run to take 2nd in Class 4, even with the run 1 maximum hanging over his head. No more problems for Adrian Marfell though, means he can climb back up the results a little and ends up in 16th, taking the Class 3 victory as well. And it's a class win too for Rich Mitchell, leading Class 4 all day and walking away with that top place in the class at the finish of the event. Joe Philpott continues to increase the pace on the afternoon runs to take the Class 2 victory at the finish, and of course 14th overall. Scott Benwell suffers a bad time on run 6, unfortunately dropping him down the overall results into 13th, but he does manage to still take the Class 7 win. Chris Bowler works his way up the overall results a little to lie just outside the top 10 in 11th, and with it taking 3rd in Class 8. 2nd in that class, and rounding out the top 10 would be Rob Bull and Bruce Mallet. The pair's earlier punctures looking like they cost them the class win this weekend. Lots of last minute movement up the results due to a retirement ahead, and it will be a move to 9th overall for Tom Rimmel and taking the win in the 7i class. No change in the Class 8 battle for Brian Dyke, holding on to that lead from the start and taking the class win by the finish. Tim Tennant as well, having a very steady run all day. The time's not changing much over the 8 runs, and it nets him a great 7th place finish at the end of the event. A similar story too for Mark Potts, ending the event with 6th overall and just grabbing 3rd in Class 8I as well. And for Bruce Tigwell, it will be 5th place, ending the event with 2nd in the class, finishing just over half a minute ahead of Potts in the end. So for Martin Hounsell, it means he gets to walk away with the Class 8I win. A great performance all day, seeing him take 4th overall too. Unfortunately, a lot of movement in the top of the results was down to the loss of Mark Hones. A disappointing end to a good performance all day. But one man's loss is another's gain, and James King takes full advantage of being close to the podium places, jumping into 3rd in the final runs. A great finish here at the final round of the championship. But there wouldn't be any change at the top, and it's 2nd place this weekend for Andy DiGiulio and Paul Jones. Unable to catch the leaders today, but the gap did remain the same throughout the afternoon. So that means that it's a win for Rick and Sandra Mann. A good faultless run all weekend to add another win to the car's record before it gets some TLC over the winter break. So with the final round of the All-Wheel Drive Club Championship complete, a reminder of the overall results.
So there we have it. Rick Mann takes the win here at the final of the Brit Parts All-Wheel Drive Championship. Next up, all of the action from the Scottish Rally Championship.